It was a Tuesday evening when my world came crashing down. The sun had begun to set, casting a warm orange glow through the living room window, and I was just about to pour myself a glass of wine after a long day at work. My wife, Sarah, was supposed to be home from her yoga class any minute. We had plans for a quiet dinner together, a simple affair to unwind and reconnect. Little did I know, the warmth of that setting sun would soon be eclipsed by the cold shadow of betrayal. I heard her phone buzz on the kitchen counter. It was a sound I had become accustomed to over the years, a melody of notifications that often punctuated our evenings. But this time, something compelled me to glance at the screen. I shouldn't have done it, but curiosity got the better of me. The message was from a contact I didn't recognize, a name that seemed foreign and unsettling. It read, "I miss you. Can't wait to see you again." In that fleeting moment, my heart sank. I felt a rush of adrenaline, a primal instinct kicking in, telling me to dig deeper. I picked up the phone, my fingers trembling as I opened the conversation. The messages were intimate, filled with heart emojis and declarations of longing. The realization crashed over me like a tidal wave. Sarah was having an affair. As I stood there, my mind raced. The laughter we shared, the dreams we built together, everything felt like a lie. I had trusted her completely, and now it felt as if the ground beneath me was crumbling away. I remember the first time we met, her infectious smile lighting up the room, and how I had fallen in love with her passion for life. We had built a life together, and now it felt like it was being ripped apart at the seams. When she walked through the door moments later, I was still holding her phone, my heart pounding in my chest. The look on her face shifted from surprise to confusion as she saw me standing there, her betrayal laid bare in my hands. "What's wrong?" she asked, feigning innocence. But I didn't need to answer. I simply tossed her phone onto the couch, the weight of my discovery hanging between us like a thick fog. "Who is he?" "Sarah," the words came out more like a growl than a question, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. Her expression shifted, and for a brief moment I saw a flicker of guilt cross her face. "It's not what you think," she stammered. "I can explain." But explanations felt hollow. I could see the fear in her eyes, the panic of being caught. "You cheated on me for how long?" I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. Her silence spoke volumes. It was as if time stood still, and in that moment everything I thought I knew about our marriage shattered. I felt a hot wave of betrayal wash over me, the pain of her infidelity cutting deeper than I could have imagined. "I did it for love," she finally said, her voice trembling. "I thought I was lost, and he made me feel alive again." The irony of her words stung like salt in a fresh wound. Love. The very thing she claimed to have for me had been tossed aside, exchanged for fleeting moments with another man. The emotional turmoil twisted inside me, leaving me feeling hollow and betrayed. As I processed the weight of her confession, I realized I was standing at a crossroads. The woman I loved had not only betrayed our vows but had also shattered the trust we had built over years. I could feel my heart hardening, the warmth of our shared memories turning to ice. The evening that had promised to be a simple dinner was now a battleground of emotions. I had a choice to make: confront her, demand answers, or walk away. But deep down, I knew that whatever decision I made would change everything. The days that followed were a blur. I moved through life like a ghost, haunted by the betrayal that had shattered everything I believed in. I went to work, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying every moment, every laugh, and every shared dream with Sarah. It felt like I was living in a parallel universe where the rules had changed overnight. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. It wasn't just the act itself. It was the trust that had been broken. I had given her my heart, my loyalty, and in return she had thrown it away for what? A fleeting spark, a midlife crisis. I felt like a fool, a man who had been blind to the signs, believing in a love that now felt like a cruel joke. Inside my head, I wrestled with conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to scream, to confront her with every ounce of pain she had caused me. But another part wanted to understand. How could she justify her actions? How could she claim to cheat for love when love should have been the very thing that kept her faithful? I found myself oscillating between anger and sadness, unable to settle on a single emotion. One night, I sat alone in our dimly lit living room, staring blankly at the walls adorned with photographs of happier times. There was a picture of our wedding day, her radiant smile forever frozen in time. I remembered how we had promised to love each other through thick and thin. Those vows now felt like empty words, a facade that had masked the truth. I thought about the moments we had shared, the late-night talks, the inside jokes, the dreams of starting a family. Had it all been a lie, the thought of it made my stomach churn. I had been so naive, believing that our love was unbreakable. Now, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, looking down into the abyss of heartbreak. As I tried to piece together the timeline of her affair, I couldn't help but feel a sense of betrayal from the world around me. Friends who had cheered us on, family who had celebrated our union, all stood as witnesses to a love that had crumbled under the weight of deceit. I felt isolated, as if I were the only one grappling with this new reality. I began to question everything. Was I not enough? Had I failed her in some way? The whispers of self-doubt crept in, gnawing at my confidence. I replayed conversations in my mind, searching for clues I had missed, signs that might have indicated her discontent. The more I searched, the more frustrated I became. It was as if I was trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces, and every answer led me to more questions. One evening, I decided to confront Sarah again. I needed answers, even if they hurt. I found her sitting on the couch, her eyes red and puffy, as if she had been crying. I could see the guilt etched on her features, but it wasn't enough. I needed her to understand the depth of the pain she had caused. "Do you love him?" I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. She hesitated, and that pause felt like a knife twisting in my heart. "I thought I did," she finally admitted. "But it was more about feeling wanted, alive. I was lost, and he filled a void I didn't even know I had." "Did you ever think about what you were destroying?" I pressed, my voice rising. "You didn't just cheat on me, you shattered our life together. You broke our vows." "I know," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I was selfish. I thought I could find what was missing without losing you." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a mix of anger and sorrow wash over me. How could she be so blind to the consequences of her actions? It was as if she had chosen to indulge in a fantasy, oblivious to the reality she was dismantling. As the conversation continued, I felt my heart hardening. I could no longer see the woman I had loved. Instead, I saw a stranger, someone who had betrayed my trust and turned my world upside down. The warmth I once felt for her was replaced with a cold, steely resolve. I realized then that I was on the precipice of a decision that would change everything. The betrayal I felt was not just a personal wound. It was a fundamental fracture in the foundation of our relationship. I had to decide whether to fight for what we had or to walk away from the ruins of our love. In that moment, I understood that trust is fragile, and once broken, it is incredibly difficult to rebuild. My heart ached for the love we had shared, but I also felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. I couldn't continue living in this shadow of betrayal. I needed to reclaim my life, even if it meant letting go of the woman I once adored. I had spent a sleepless night wrestling with my thoughts, my heart a battlefield of conflicting emotions. The morning light filtered through the curtains, illuminating the remnants of our life together. I could hear Sarah moving around the kitchen, the clattering of dishes a reminder that life continued despite the turmoil between us. I knew we needed to talk again. The weight of her justification lingered in my mind, and I needed to understand how she could reconcile her actions with the love we once shared. As I walked into the kitchen, I found her standing by the coffee maker, her back turned to me. I could see her shoulders tense as I approached. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She turned to face me, her eyes red from lack of sleep, guilt etched on her face. "I know," she replied softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you do it?" I asked, my heart racing. "You said you cheated for love. What does that even mean?" She took a deep breath, her eyes searching mine for understanding. "I felt neglected, like we were drifting apart. I thought I could find something with him that I was missing in our marriage." Missing? What was missing? I pressed, frustration bubbling to the surface. "We had a good life, Sarah. We were happy." "Were we?" she countered, her voice rising. You were always at work, and when you were home, you were so tired. I felt alone, like I was living in a shadow. I didn't know how to reach you anymore." Her words pierced through me, and I felt a pang of guilt. I had been so focused on my career trying to provide for us that I had neglected the emotional connection we once shared. But that didn't justify her betrayal. "So, you thought cheating was the answer?" I asked, incredulous. "I thought it would help me feel alive again," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "He made me feel desired, wanted. It was intoxicating, and I got lost in it. I didn't think about the consequences until it was too late." Her admission hit me like a freight train. I had always known she craved affection, but I never imagined it would lead her to another man's arms. "And did you ever think about me? About what this would do to our marriage?" "I didn't want to hurt you," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought I could have both, him for excitement and you for stability. I thought I could find a way to make it work." The absurdity of her reasoning made my head spin. How could she think that having an affair could somehow coexist with our marriage? "You can't have it both ways, Sarah. You can't love someone and betray them at the same time." "I know that now," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I was selfish, and I thought I could fill a void without losing what we had. I thought I could find love in someone else and still come home to you." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of her realization. The irony was maddening. She had chased an illusion of love while destroying the very thing she claimed to cherish. I felt a mix of anger and sadness, the complexity of her justification swirling around in my mind like a storm. "Did he ever love you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I thought he did. At least, I thought he cared for me. But I realize now that it was all about the thrill, the excitement of something new. He never intended to stay." The admission struck me like a knife. "So you were just a passing fancy to him?" I asked, my heart sinking further. She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. "I was blinded by the moment, by the attention. I thought it was love, but it was just an escape from reality. And now I've lost everything." The anguish in her voice resonated deeply within me. I had once loved this woman fiercely, and seeing her in pain stirred something within me. But the betrayal was too fresh, too raw. "You can't just say you did it for love and expect me to understand," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Love doesn't justify infidelity, it destroys it." "I know," she sobbed, collapsing onto a kitchen chair. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I can forgive myself." The sight of her brokenness pulled at my heart, but the anger still simmered beneath the surface. I wanted to scream, to shake her and make her understand the depth of her betrayal. But I also wanted to comfort her, too. Tell her that everything would be okay, even though I knew it wouldn't be. As I stood there watching her cry, I felt the walls of my own heart begin to harden. I realized that her justification was a reflection of her own insecurities, a desperate attempt to fill a void that ultimately led to our destruction. I couldn't allow myself to get lost in her pain. I had to protect myself. "I need time," I finally said, my voice steady. "I need to figure out what I want and what this means for us." Sarah nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "I understand. I just hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me someday." As I turned to leave the kitchen, I felt a mixture of sorrow and resolve. I knew this was just the beginning of a long and painful journey. The love we had once shared was now overshadowed by betrayal, and I had to decide whether to fight for it or walk away. The days turned into weeks, and I found myself navigating a new reality. Sarah and I existed under the same roof, but it felt as if we were living in parallel worlds, two strangers sharing a space once filled with love. The silence between us was deafening, punctuated only by the mundane sounds of daily life: a coffee maker brewing, a door closing, the faint hum of the television. Each sound was a reminder of the life we had built, now tainted by betrayal. I had made the decision to leave, but it was not as simple as packing my bags and walking away. I felt an overwhelming sense of loss, as if I were mourning the death of a relationship that had once been vibrant and full of promise. The thought of leaving her alone after everything that had happened weighed heavily on my conscience. But I knew I couldn't stay, not when every glance at her face reminded me of the pain she had caused. As I packed my belongings, I felt a mix of emotions swirling within me: anger, sadness, and a strange sense of relief. I was finally taking control of my life, stepping away from the chaos that had engulfed me. But with each item I placed in a box, I felt the weight of memories pressing down on me. I remembered our first apartment, the laughter that echoed through the walls and the dreams we had shared. It was painful to think that those memories were now tainted, forever altered by her betrayal. The day I finally left was surreal. I stood in the doorway, looking back at the place we had called home, the walls filled with echoes of our laughter and love. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but the anxiety clawed at my insides. I had told Sarah I needed time, but I also needed space to heal, to figure out who I was without her. I moved into a small apartment downtown, a stark contrast to the home I had shared with Sarah. The walls were bare, the space empty, and I felt a profound sense of loneliness wash over me. I spent the first few days in a daze, going through the motions of life while grappling with the reality of my situation. I avoided friends and family, unsure of how to explain what had happened. The shame of her infidelity weighed heavily on my shoulders, and I felt like I was carrying a burden that was too heavy to bear. In the quiet moments, I found myself reflecting on the affair partner, the man who had taken my wife away from me. I had never met him, but I imagined him as a charming figure, someone who had swept her off her feet with his attention and excitement. I wondered if he had truly cared for her or if she had simply been a conquest, another notch on his belt. The thought made my blood boil, but I also understood that Sarah had made her choices. She had sought solace in another man, and now she was left with the consequences. The weeks dragged on, and I began to establish a routine. I focused on work, immersing myself in projects to distract from the emotional turmoil. I started going to the gym, channeling my anger into physical activity. It felt good to push myself, to reclaim my sense of strength and independence. I even began to explore new hobbies, painting, something I had always wanted to try but had never found the time for. Each stroke of the brush was a release, a way to express the pain and confusion that had taken root within me. But despite the progress, I couldn't shake the feeling of loss. I missed Sarah, the woman I had loved with all my heart. I missed our conversations, our shared laughter, and the intimacy we once had. I found myself oscillating between anger and longing, wishing things could have been different. I replayed our last conversation in my mind, searching for answers, wondering if there was a way to salvage what was left of our relationship. One evening, as I sat in my new apartment, I received a text from Sarah. My heart raced as I opened it, a mix of anticipation and dread swirling within me. "Can we talk?" It read. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Did she want to apologize again? Did she want to explain? I felt torn, caught between the desire for closure and the fear of reopening old wounds. After a long pause, I replied, "Sure." "When?" She suggested meeting at a cafe we used to frequent, a place filled with memories both sweet and bitter. I agreed, knowing that we needed to face the situation head-on, but part of me dreaded what would happen once we sat across from each other. Would we end up arguing? Would she try to convince me to come back? The uncertainty gnawed at me. The day of our meeting arrived, and I felt a knot in my stomach as I walked into the cafe. The familiar scent of coffee and pastries filled the air, but it did little to ease my anxiety. I spotted Sarah sitting at a table in the corner, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of coffee. She looked vulnerable, her eyes searching the room as if hoping to find the right words. When our eyes met, a wave of emotions crashed over me, anger, sadness, and a flicker of love I thought I had buried. I approached the table and she smiled weakly, a smile that felt both inviting and painful. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, her voice trembling. I nodded, taking a seat across from her. "What did you want to talk about?" "I wanted to explain," she began, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know I hurt you and I can't take that back, but I've been doing a lot of thinking. I realize now that I was running away from our problems instead of facing them." I listened, my heart racing as I tried to gauge her sincerity. "And what about him?" I asked, my voice steady. "Did you think he would provide the answers you needed?" She sighed, her gaze dropping to the table. "I thought he could fill the void, but it was all an illusion. I see that now. I was lost and confused, and I took the easy way out. Her words resonated with me, but they also stirred up the pain I had been trying to process. I wanted to believe her, to see the remorse in her eyes as genuine, but the scars of betrayal still ran deep. "I don't know what to say," I finally admitted. "You broke my trust, Sarah. It's hard to see a way forward." "I understand," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me someday. I miss you." Her admission hung in the air, and I felt a mix of emotions flooding through me. I missed her too, but the road to healing would be long and fraught with challenges. As we sat there, surrounded by the bustle of the cafe, I realized that I was at a crossroads. The decision to reconcile or move on weighed heavily on my heart. I had to confront not only my love for her, but also the betrayal that had torn us apart. After that fateful meeting at the cafe, I found myself in a state of introspection. Sarah's words echoed in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been given a rare opportunity, a chance to reflect on my life, my choices, and the man I wanted to become. The road ahead was uncertain, but I felt a flicker of hope that perhaps I could emerge from this darkness stronger than before. I began to spend more time alone, diving into self-reflection. I took long walks through the city, the crisp air a balm for my troubled thoughts. I visited parks, sat on benches, and watched the world go by. Each moment of solitude allowed me to sift through my emotions, to confront the pain of betrayal while also recognizing the lessons embedded within it. I realized that my relationship with Sarah had become a mirror, reflecting not only her flaws but also my own. I had been so consumed by my career that I had neglected the emotional intimacy that had once flourished between us. I had taken her love for granted, assuming it would always be there. The realization hit me hard. Love requires constant nurturing, a commitment to growth and understanding on both sides. As I reflected on my past, I started to understand the importance of communication in any relationship. Sarah had felt isolated and alone, but I had been oblivious to her struggles. I had been focused on providing for us, but I had failed to check in emotionally. I vowed to myself that if I ever found love again, I would prioritize open and honest communication. I also began to explore my passions more deeply. Painting became a therapeutic outlet, a way for me to express the tumultuous emotions I was grappling with. I signed up for a local art class, immersing myself in colors and canvases. Each brushstroke felt liberating, a way to channel my pain into something beautiful. I found solace in the creative process, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of purpose returning to my life. In the evenings, I started journaling, pouring my thoughts onto the pages as a means of processing my emotions. I recorded my struggles, my triumphs, and the moments of clarity that emerged from the chaos. Writing became a cathartic experience, allowing me to confront my feelings head-on without judgment. I documented my journey of healing, my hopes for the future, and the lessons I learned from my relationship with Sarah. Despite the growth I was experiencing, there were still moments of deep sadness. I missed the companionship we had shared, the laughter that had once filled our home. I found myself reminiscing about our travels, the adventures we had embarked on together. Each memory was a double-edged sword, a reminder of the love we had, but also of the betrayal that had shattered it. I also began to reconnect with friends, people I had distanced myself from during my marriage. I found comfort in their support and camaraderie, and it felt good to share my experiences with those who cared about me. They reminded me that I was not alone in this journey, that others had faced their own trials and emerged stronger on the other side. As the weeks turned into months, I continued to navigate the complexities of healing. I still had moments of anger and resentment towards Sarah, but I also recognized that harboring those feelings would only hold me back. I began to practice forgiveness, not to absolve her of her actions, but to free myself from the weight of bitterness. It was a difficult process, but I understood that forgiveness was ultimately a gift I could give myself. One evening, as I sat in my small apartment, I received another text from Sarah. "Can we talk again? I think I've finally come to terms with everything," it read. I hesitated, weighing the decision in my mind. Part of me was curious about her growth, while another part feared reopening old wounds. After a moment of deliberation, I replied, "Okay, let's meet." When we met, I noticed a change in her demeanor. She seemed more composed, her eyes reflecting a deeper understanding of the hurt she had caused. We sat in a quiet corner of a different cafe, the atmosphere more subdued than before. "I've been doing a lot of soul-searching," she began, her voice steady. "I've realized that I need to take responsibility for my actions. I can't keep blaming you or external circumstances." I listened intently, surprised by her newfound clarity. "That's a step in the right direction," I said, cautiously optimistic. "I've also been seeing a therapist," she continued. "I'm working on understanding why I made the choices I did. I don't want to repeat those mistakes." Her honesty resonated with me, and I felt a flicker of hope. "I've been working on myself too," I admitted. "I've learned a lot about what went wrong in our relationship, and I want to be better in the future." We spent the next hour discussing our journeys, sharing insights and reflections. It was a conversation filled with vulnerability and honesty, and for the first time since the affair, I felt a sense of connection returning. We talked about love, trust, and the importance of communication in any relationship. It was as if we were no longer two people bound by betrayal, but individuals seeking understanding and growth. As we parted ways, I felt a mix of emotions. I knew that our relationship would never be the same, but I also understood that healing was possible. Whether that healing would lead to reconciliation or simply a deeper understanding of ourselves remained to be seen. But what mattered was that we were both on a path toward growth, and that gave me hope. In the weeks that followed, I continued to focus on my personal growth while remaining open to the possibility of reconciliation. I knew it would take time, patience, and a lot of hard work. But for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of clarity about what I wanted in my life, a love built on trust, communication, and mutual respect. I was ready to embrace whatever the future held, whether it was with Sarah or on my own. I had learned that love is not just about the highs, it's also about navigating the lows together. And in that realization, I found a sense of peace. As time continued its steady march forward, I found myself standing at a new crossroads. The emotional turmoil that had once consumed me was beginning to settle, replaced by a sense of clarity and purpose. I had spent months focusing on my personal growth, healing from the wounds of betrayal, and redefining what love meant to me. Now I was ready to face the future, whatever it may hold. I had maintained an open line of communication with Sarah, and our conversations had evolved. We spoke more as friends now, two people who had shared a significant chapter of their lives and who were learning to navigate the aftermath of heartbreak. There was still a palpable tension between us, a reminder of the pain we had endured, but it was accompanied by a newfound respect for one another's journeys. One sunny afternoon, Sarah invited me to join her for a walk in the park where we used to spend lazy Sundays together. My heart raced with anticipation and anxiety as I agreed. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I understood that this was another step in our healing process. As we walked side by side, I couldn't help but notice how the world around us seemed to mirror our journey. The trees were beginning to bloom, vibrant flowers bursting forth with color, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of spring. It felt as if nature was celebrating renewal, a perfect backdrop for the conversation we were about to have. "Thank you for coming," Sarah said, glancing at me with a shy smile. There was a softness in her voice that reminded me of the woman I had fallen in love with. "I needed to," I replied, my tone steady. "I think it's important for us to keep moving forward, whatever that means." We found a bench under a large oak tree and sat down, the quiet rustle of leaves providing a comforting backdrop. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her gaze fixed on the ground. "I know I hurt you deeply and I can never truly make amends for what I did, but I want you to know that I've been working on myself. I want to be a better person, not just for you, but for myself." Her honesty struck a chord within me. "I appreciate that," I said, looking into her eyes. "I've been on my own journey too. I've learned so much about what went wrong in our relationship and what I need to do differently in the future. We exchanged stories of our personal growth, sharing the lessons we had learned through the pain. It felt liberating to speak openly, to acknowledge our mistakes without the weight of judgment hanging over us. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, and it filled me with a sense of hope. "I still care about you, you know," Sarah said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if we can ever go back to what we had, but I hope we can find a way to move forward, even if it's as friends." "I care about you too," I replied, my heart aching at the thought of what we had lost. "But I also know that trust is hard to rebuild. It's going to take time." "I understand," she said, nodding. "I'm willing to put in the work if you are. I just want you to be happy, even if it's not with me." Her words resonated deeply. I had spent so long grappling with feelings of betrayal and loss, but now I felt a sense of peace washing over me. I realized that love isn't always about possession. Sometimes it's about letting go and allowing someone to find their own path. As we sat under the oak tree, I felt the warmth of the sun on my face, a gentle reminder that life continues to move forward. I had spent too much time dwelling on the past, and now it was time to embrace the future. Whether that future included Sarah or not, I was ready to open my heart to new possibilities. In the weeks that followed, we continued to meet regularly, sharing our experiences and supporting one another in our healing journeys. The weight of betrayal began to lift, replaced by the lightness of friendship. I began to see Sarah not just as the woman who had hurt me, but as a person who was also searching for her place in the world. Eventually, we both found ourselves dating other people. It was a strange feeling, navigating the world of relationships again, but it brought with it a sense of freedom. I was no longer defined by my past. I was forging my own path, one step at a time. I realized that what had once felt like the end was merely a new beginning. I had learned to value myself, to recognize my worth, and to understand that love is not just about finding the right person, but also about being the right person. I was determined to carry those lessons with me into whatever future awaited. Looking back, I understood that the affair had been a catalyst for change. It forced me to confront my own shortcomings and to reevaluate what I wanted from life. I was grateful for the growth that had emerged from the ashes of betrayal, and I knew that I would carry those lessons with me as I moved forward. As I sat on my balcony one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, I felt a sense of hope. I was ready to embrace love again, to open my heart to the possibility of new connections. The journey had been painful, but it had also been transformative. I had learned that true love is built on trust, communication, and a willingness to grow together. I took a deep breath, feeling the gentle breeze against my skin. Life was unpredictable, but I was ready to face it head-on. Whatever the future held, I knew I would approach it with an open heart, ready to embrace love in all its forms. And in that moment, I realized that I was no longer defined by my past. I was a man reborn, ready to write the next chapter of my life. The sun dipped below the horizon, and I smiled, hopeful for the journey ahead.